And we're live. Good evening and welcome to the February 14th, 2023 meeting of the Stow Select Board. Happy Valentine's Day. We have a full complement of the board in the room tonight, along with our town administrator. And with that, I will open up for public comment. If you have a comment, please raise your hand. Yes.
Debbie Woods. So, Madam Chair, thank you very much. With COVID winding down, or I should say with COVID, work from home and or remote was very important. It was critical for us to stay safe as well as to keep business going. Right now, COVID is winding down. I won't say it's gone, but it's winding down. And the need to work remote or the need to work from home is now kind of shifting a little bit to want. So that need to be remote is now shifting towards want. I'm a firm believer in supporting hybrid. I think it's a great thing. It's a win-win for employees. It's a win for the employee. But we need to ensure that now, where it's not a need and maybe going into the want, that it's consistent and fair to all. Whether it's a new employee walking into the building or walking into an employee or a 30-year vet, it needs to be consistent. So my ask of the select board as the policy folks is to review the policy for the employee policy to ensure that remote is addressed in there, which I don't think currently it is, and to ensure that across departments and across everyone within the organization, that it is fair and equitable. And that if there are specific requirements that have to be met to work remote, that those requirements are listed very, very carefully, very clearly, so that someone will know, yes, they are eligible to work remote, or no, they're not.
Thank you. Are there any?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. I had one of my letters is in your packet regarding.
Yep. I'm sorry. Hi,
zoning
Lee.
boundaries.
Lee.
Yes.
You've got to announce I can see what your name is. You have to say what your name is and where you live. Sorry.
Okay. Well, you said my name, so I thought that was enough. I'm Lee Hildebrand, 196 Great Road.
Okay.
I sent a letter to planning board and the select board about the boundaries for the Lower Village Business District that do not currently follow property lines, which is what the bylaw is. And also letting people know that there was a land court judgment regarding a property that was next door at 194 Great Road. So I just wanted to make sure that if anybody had any questions, that let me know, because I really haven't. I'm unclear as what I'm supposed to do because I've gotten different correspondence about changing my zoning, and that's not what I was really asking for. I'm just asking for the boundaries to be redrawn so that they follow the property line as bylaw, and to have my 300-year-old house be in the residential zoning.
Okay. Thank you for that. Well, anybody else?
No.
Okay. All right, we are going to move on to board member comments. Anyone have anything they would like to say?
Got a quick one?
Yeah.
I'm on the local access, oh boy, WCAG. That's embarrassing. Stow TV is now streaming in HD, and you can find it on the Stow TV website page. On our Stow website. So both the public and the government programming is, if you could see it on cable, it would be also streaming in HD.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything, Ingrid? No. Hector? Yep.
Some of you may know that after our deep freeze, the meeting house building had a issue where its entire fire sprinkler system emptied out into its lobby. And I wanted to commend the fire department and all the other town agencies that came out and helped us out helped make sure that we could stay there even though we temporarily didn't have a fire suppression system, but also figure out what we needed to do to get it all working. And I also wanted to, some thoughts about the human cost that has happened in Turkey and Syria after that serious earthquake where I believe last count there's over 35,000 dead and thousands even more displaced. That's it.
Thank you.
So the regional, another one of those committees, Regional Agreement Advisory Committee has finished their work. It's going to the school committee next week. It's gonna be on town meeting warrant, and I'm just wondering if we wanna have a discussion or presentation from the committee before town meeting.
Okay.
Denise has looked at it, and the town administrators have weighed in on, I think, got the right input into it, so but it's sort of confusing and yet it's not. I mean, it's but it's gonna be one of those documents on the warrant that people are gonna like, really? I have to read this? So, yeah.
So to comment on that, we actually got an email,
Yeah,
Megan was
from-
copied
yeah,
today.
From Leah.
They were actually inviting the board members to attend their meeting to ask questions. I actually didn't have a chance to read the draft, so I don't know if the concerns I had
They
have
did
been
get
addressed.
yes.
So I don't know if they would be willing to come here as well, where they're asking folks to go to their two
I
meetings.
think it mostly would be, Leah is serving as the chair of the committee at this point, so she, and Brian Boyle from Bolton is really the one who's more on top of it.
Okay.
It's just, the meeting's tomorrow and I can't make it, so
Okay.
I'm not going to the school committee meeting.
I think it's a great idea if we could have them in, cause
Yeah.
I think it's something that should be discussed
I think
here.
so prior to town meeting, especially if it's
Yeah, I
going to
don't
be on the
think there's
warrant,
not a
I
huge
think
rush.
even if it's like a 5-minute presentation on what it is, I think it's important to just have it forward facing as opposed to, so thank you for that.
So,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I'll mention, I mean, we had another loss in town, if
Right.
people didn't read, Tony Tedesco from on Main Street Florist, who, if you lived here long enough, you must have gotten flowers from
Yeah.
him. He was a true artist of a florist, and it's really sad.
Yeah.
I knew that he was giving up the business, but I actually had called him just 2 weeks ago when my friend Rick died, and the phone was disconnected, and then a few days later heard that he had passed. So another huge loss to town.
I just wanna add to that, a piece of trivia that I didn't know. Apparently Tony did the arrangements here in town building for many years, so those beautiful
Yes.
Yeah.
seasonal arrangements.
Yeah.
You know, as an artist, I would say that his work was both sculptural and, I mean, he had all of the elements of art considered, you know, not just plant materials, but space and color balance and, you know, it's just really
It was amazing.
well done.
All right, on that note, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Denise.
Thank you. So as of February 19th, we have 14 cases of COVID in town. We're actually double the state and the county average for the first time in a long time. We are at almost a 16% positivity rate, and both the state and county are just about 8%. We do have COVID tests available. They seem to be flying off the shelves here. There are some at the front door of the town building. They're available in the library. The COA has some, or the Board of Health office. So feel free, if folks need at-home tests, come in and grab what you need. Excuse me. The school budget is being presented to the finance committees on 2 weeks from today, on February 28th. That meeting will be at 6 p.m., fully on Zoom. I would still ask if I could push off my state of the town to be the following meeting, because at least I'll have a realistic school number, because they won't be voting on it until after the 28th meeting. So if that's okay, I would plan for March 14th for that.
Can I ask one quick question about that? Will we be able to, should the board want to watch that meeting here?
Sure, I
Would
could
that be
set it up.
something that we could do?
Yes.
Because we have a meeting at 7.
I would just say we'd have to post your meeting if you're all gonna be in the same room together.
Oh, right, okay.
So
Okay.
we can post
Think
a
about it.
6 o'clock for you, so let me know if that's something you wanna do.
Yeah,
So Stow is chairing, so Erica will be the chair of that meeting. There's been some prior discussions with the school administration on who will be permitted to speak at a public meeting. I believe they've identified just the chairs of the finance committees and the town administrators, but it will still be up to the chair's discretion on who she recognizes that night if there are other questions. But that is 2 weeks from today at 6 p.m. Some questions came up last week regarding the Linear Plaza. Just to let the board know, Valerie and I are meeting with the representatives from Linear next Tuesday. They've actually reached out to us. Most of their initiative to reach out involves wanting a drive-through in that plaza, but we will see what they have to say and if there's other concerns they have. And then I will report back here at the February 28th meeting. He didn't have any other asks. It was pretty much all about drive-throughs, but we said we'll meet and see what they have to say. As of right now, the open meeting law is set to expire. The remote provisions are set to expire on March 31st. We are still waiting to hear if the remote provisions will be extended or if they will rewrite the open meeting law as they've been talking about for the last 3 years. There is pending legislation to just extend these same provisions through June of 2024. I'll keep you posted. I advised the department heads today to, if you'll recall, last year in July, we were facing the same thing. So the boards that are meeting fully remote had to post some creative language on their agendas if it was coming up to that timeline. So I advise them to just do the same thing. That way, if they can stay remote, they'll have that ability. If they have to be in person, they'll also have that ability.
Good.
But hopefully we'll have an answer. Last year, they waited till the day of. Hopefully we'll hear before then. Speaking of the open meeting law, just want to remind boards and committees about the open meeting law. Additionally, there have been a number of boards without minutes posted timely on the website. So, as our town clerk just walked in, she's looking to put together an open meeting law seminar as a good reminder. One of the things we want to reiterate is boards will get themselves into trouble by conducting business through email. Every once in a while, one of us are CC'd on a thread of board members having conversations and deliberating outside of a meeting. So I caution, I know it's not you all, but I caution boards, especially the smaller boards that don't have staff support. You cannot be having these conversations in email. Everything has to be discussed in a posted meeting. So I would just encourage folks to read up on the open meeting law, and hopefully we'll have a presentation soon. Board members can be personally liable for violations of the open meeting law. So it's the board and the person directly could be liable. So just keep that in mind. And those are what I have for you this evening.
Great. Thank you, Denise. All right, we have 2 appointments this evening. The first one is Robert Webster to the Board of Registrars. Denise, you had a note in there?
I do. Rob is on our meeting. He comes highly recommended from our town clerk's office. He helped out last year, wanted to be more involved with the community and really enjoy participating in the election. I think he will be a great fit as a registrar.
Fantastic. Rob, did you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I have lived here in Stow since 2006. I apologize for the dark background. I'm actually in my vehicle outside the building where my daughter is practicing softball right now. Stow has been a wonderful community. My wife and I really loved it. It's been a great place to raise our 2 kids. My kids went to a little school over in Maynard called the Imago School. My son from there went off to Neshoba, and he's actually a freshman in college right now. And my daughter is in high school. And at this point, I thought, well, I got to try to, see if I can do a little bit in terms of public service. So I volunteered to help out with the voting this past fall, the early voting, and got to work with Linda and Deb Seitz, and they were wonderful. And so this opening appeared, and I said, I'd be happy to try to help out with that if I could.
Great. Any board members have any questions?
I just agree. It's fun to work for the elections. So.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. All right, with that, I will take a motion.
I move to appoint Robert Webster to the Board of Registrars to complete the remainder of an unexpired 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2024.
Second?
Any further discussion? Nope, seeing none, all in favor? Aye, and that is unanimous. Congratulations, thank you again, Rob.
Thank you.
All right, and we have another position, Daniel Gesell. Did I pronounce it right? Dan, are you on?
He is, I'm not sure if he was prepared to speak.
Oh,
but
no,
I
it's
will-
totally fine. I just wanted to make sure I didn't pronounce his name wrong.
He can say hello if he'd like, I asked him to unmute.
Hi, Dan.
It's animal. How are you?
Gesell.
Gesell, all right, perfect, sorry. Great, this, did you wanna speak, Denise?
Yeah, certainly. So Dan has a lot of varied experience, as I mentioned. He has landscaping and driveway patching and plowing and construction, in addition to working on vehicles and some equipment. We thought he'd be a great fit in the highway department, and we hope that he will be pursuing his CDL, at which time I would come back and ask to upgrade him to the truck driver laborer position.
Great.
But he'll be starting out as a laborer, and they're excited to get him on board.
Fantastic. Anybody have any questions for Dan? All right, with that, I will take a motion then.
I move to appoint Daniel Gesell to the position of laborer for the Stow Highway Department.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye, and that's unanimous. Welcome to the department, Dan.
Thank you so much.
All right, next order of business. Chief Solisi, would you like to?
Sure. Could you actually unmute Adrian?
Yes, I could.
So I'm here because for about 12 to 15 years now, the police department has been involved with Domestic Violence Services Network along with Communities for Restorative Justice. And part of that, there are nonprofit organizations, and they go in front and they look for money. So part of that is they actually go, both organizations have come to Stow to talk to our community chest, and they've asked me in the past to say, what does our organizations do for the Stow Police Department, the residents of Stow? So I give that perspective so Stow Community Chest can understand what we're doing with these organizations. This year, the conversation continued after that to the point where they were asking, what's going on in Stow? What else can we be doing as a Stow Community Chest? How can we support the police department, or how can we support the town? So through some emails and discussions with the fire chief and myself and the community chest, we've been trying to put our Narcan in along with our AEDs throughout the town. There's about 8 spots that we have available that are public access to AEDs. So with the opioid problem going on, we want to make sure that this is available because it also is a life-saving tool that we can have. So part of that is what we were doing, we're just shoving the Narcan inside these AED boxes, and if you don't know it's there, you might miss it.
Right.
So what this is gonna do is we presented to the Stow Community Chest, hey, this is what we're looking for. We wanna be able to put this Narcan out in the open next to our AEDs, and they were gracious enough to come back and say, hey, we'll purchase those for you. They're between $60 and $80 a piece, and they said they'd buy 10 of them. So it's definitely over the $50 as a donation. So I was working with the community chest, and they were really gracious, and they're willing to purchase this. I don't know if you know how to say anything.
No, just there's going to be a change in leadership at the Stow Community Chest very shortly. We have somebody new taking over, which, like me, has a background in healthcare. So when the chief came to us with this, we were very, very interested. We were very much involved in this space, and we knew exactly what he was talking about and what he wanted to achieve. So we wanted to support him, and we took it to the board, and they unanimously agreed to fund it. So now we hope to God that they just gather dust
Right,
and they are never used.
right.
And they reach their expiration date and end up in a landfill somewhere.
So
But the reality is they're there if needed, and we felt it was very, very important to fund this. So
Excellent.
thank you to the chief.
thank you.
Thank you.
So speaking of expiration dates, so the fire department, working with them, will be able to keep an eye on the expiration date of these. We don't pay for them right now, I get all of our Narcan from the Middlesex District Attorney's Office, so it's free, and I just have to make sure that they're unexpired. All of our cruisers have them, so, you know, it's not only us, we also give it to the fire department as well. And so now we'll have it publicly available. We did a whole opioid panel a month ago where we gave out doses there too, if anyone wanted them. So this is something that we're gonna continue on doing.
Excellent.
The fire chief is on if you wanted to hear.
Sure, yeah, I would love to hear.
We fully support the police chief in this effort to make sure the public is safe. The idea of putting a container next to the AEDs in the public buildings such as community center, town building, library. As said, I hope we never have to use it, but having it there is a life-saving measure. So combination with everything that we've done for the safety of the community, I think it's a good addition.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief. Any questions?
I think it's a wonderful
I
idea.
think so too, yes.
Great to have
So
it
the
separate.
community chest for,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think.
stepping up,
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. It is a great example of community partnership, I think, and this is fantastic. All right, any other questions, then I will take a motion.
I move to accept the donation from Stow Community Chest of 10 Narcan cabinets to be placed in municipal buildings.
Second?
Any further discussion? No, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, thank you, Adrian,
Thank you.
thank you, JP.
Thank you.
All right, so next, we are going to be talking about, with our town clerk, the 2023 annual election information. Full disclosure, I am not on the ballot, I am, my term is up. So I have asked Ms. Sturgis to take over chairing the meeting at this point. I'm going to remove myself from the discussion, as I think is prudent. And Ms. Sturgis, take it away.
All right, so we've got the town clerk here to talk both about the positions that are open as well as the sort of options around the election, since now we have options. Do we need to review the positions particularly, or just that's just part of the mission?
You do need to take a
Take
vote
the
because
vote,
your
right.
position is now on there.
Right.
And the unexpired trustees, which was not on there the last time.
So why don't we do that one quickly and then we'll talk about the voting options. Hector, you wanna make the motion?
Be glad to. I move to approve the following slate of candidates on the ballot for the 2023 annual town election scheduled for Saturday, May 20th, 2023. Do I need to read the
Yes.
Okay. Board of Assessors, 1 3-year term. Board of Health, 1 3-year term. Neshoba Regional School Committee, 2 3-year terms. Planning Board, 1 5-year term. Trustee for Randall Library, 2 3-year terms. Trustee Randall Library, 1 3-year unexpired term expiring May 2025. Select Board, 1 3-year term. Select Board, 1 3-year unexpired term expiring May 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous with Rick McMichael abstaining. So, town clerk, why don't you, oh,
Maybe it's 'cause she recused, not
She-
abstained. If
sorry.
I can just clarify that.
clarify, recused. Yes, town clerk, Ms.
Yes.
Hathaway.
So,
Yeah.
the reason, the next part of the agenda item is, it's about vote by mail and in-person early voting. Under the new law that was passed this past summer, town elections can now have vote by mail as an option and in-person early voting. Previous to this, it was, just at election day or by absentee. So, what I have found is vote by mail is a very expensive option. And so it's a lot of postage and mailing it out. It's a lot of work on the staff time trying to get it out and handling it on election day and throughout. And I don't see it really in the whole scheme of things turning out, making the election a bigger turnout. Now, I will say, with that exception, in this last September, we had a contested select board race. And we held it on the date of the primary. And when people check off all elections for the whole year, many of them didn't realize that they would be getting a town ballot. And, we did have a significant, I think on your sheet, that we had, for the town election, we mailed out 1,500 town election ballots, and we received back, let's see,
884.
884.
Yeah, right.
We mailed out 15, we had 91 people vote in person, and the 800 were returned, but we didn't have 531 people didn't return their town election ballot. And that's a lot of postage and a lot of money and hours to get that out. So my thought is that I'd like the select board to consider opting out of vote by mail and opting into 3 days of in-person early voting. I find in-person early voting downstairs where we've held it before. We typically, for state elections, it's either 1 week prior to a primary, 2 weeks prior to a state election. But historically, we find that the busiest days for in-person early voting, which we've done since 2016, the last 3 days prior to the election are the busiest days. And typically we vote on a Tuesday, so the busiest days would be the Friday before, the Thursday before, and the Wednesday before. But since we're a Saturday annual, I'm suggesting that we do Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week. I think the Board of Registrars voted, the Registrars voted to opt out of vote by mail and opt into early voting. I don't wanna do both. I think it's one. And many people, I was looking back historically, and I know town elections are much smaller turnout. But I think by offering early voting, it gives them alternatives. We also still have absentee balloting, so if somebody they were gonna be out of town, we could mail them a ballot, an absentee ballot, but there are requirements for being on an absentee. So one of the stipulations is the select board has to hold a public hearing to take public comment if there was anybody that was interested in, and I think we have it on your agenda that the public hearing for the vote, and I don't know who's on, if anybody has a comment that they'd like to make about it.
I will
Do you have
see
any
if there are-
questions?
So are we just voting for this
For this,
election?
it has to be done on each annual
election.
Okay.
Okay.
And even the special election in the fall. So it's an automatic vote by mail unless you opt out,
I see.
and you have to opt into early voting in person. So those are the two clarifications.
So can I ask, are you asking the board to decide tonight on both this election and the special election in the fall?
No.
Okay, so you're asking just for
Just
the
for the
annual election, okay.
Yep. I
We
will
need to
tell
change
you,
that motion.
I will also tell you that
Yeah.
I didn't clarify with Bolton and Lancaster what they were doing. But I do know that many could be, I think I had a count of about 25 towns that were gonna, in the Commonwealth that had asked their select boards to opt out of vote by mail. And some were offering in-person early voting and some were not. And they were just gonna do election day. Election day is a fun day. It's a party for 5,000 registered voters to show up. And that's why I think elections are fun. A little nerve-wracking, but they're fun. You get to see a lot more people. Anyway.
Right.
Any questions?
Other questions from the board?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So are we voting for either vote by mail or in person?
So you're gonna take a vote on
Two
both.
votes.
Okay,
And you're gonna, and what I'm saying is I definitely support, and the registrars support, opting out of vote by mail. And opting in to in-person early voting. If you decide that you wanna do vote by mail anyway, we will do that, but I will take in-person early voting off the table, cause I don't wanna do both. There's, the overlap it's crazy.
Right, but if we were to vote, we wanna go with the early voting, we still have to opt out
Yes.
of the vote by
Vote by
mail.
mail.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's automatically and we have to do it.
Right, got it.
Can I ask another clarification? Does this board have to set, you mentioned the early voting hours, do they have to decide that?
I would like them to put that into the vote too.
Okay.
And so can you clarify what you would be asking for the in-person for hours?
Sure.
You said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, and hold on just a minute, let me find the hours that I was asking for. So it would be, on Monday, 9 to 3,
You ready for this, Hector?
Tuesday,
Yeah,
9
it's
to
in there,
7, cause I
Do you have the date right there, Linda?
May 15th, May 16th,
Okay.
May 17th.
Okay.
yep,
Okay, I'm sorry, Tuesday,
the 16th, 9 to 7. And Wednesday, the 17th, 9 to 3. And we could go as early as 17 days prior, but I really think those days would be the busiest. I think those would be the biggest bang for the buck.
And as you said, if people are out of town that week, they can still apply for a absentee ballot to get that done before they leave.
Yep, if they have a disability and can't get to the polls on election day, they, absentee balloting is still available, but three reasons you need one. Either you're out of town during the hours the polls are open, and our polls are open 10 to 4 on Saturday. So a lot of people who haven't been able to make elections on a Tuesday because they work, that takes that off the table. And if there's a disability that they can't get to the polls or they can't, mark their ballot or something like that, they can still get an absentee ballot. And if it's a religious holiday, so they can get an absentee ballot. So anybody who can't come to the polls on Saturday, they'll either come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or they could get an absentee. And in-person early voting doesn't require an application. So you just show up, we check you off the list, you get an envelope, write your name and address on it, mark your ballot, put it in. And it saves a lot of hassle when vote by mail, applications come back incomplete. People will mail a ballot back and it doesn't have the envelope, so then we're following up. Or they forget to sign the envelope, then we're following up. Other quirky things happen and we're doing a follow-up. It's an enormous amount of time and energy and money.
So in your packet, you included this 12-step process that you
Yes.
follow for the vote by mail. How is this different than what's followed for absentee ballot?
It's very similar, but it's the volume. The vote by mail volume is different than, normally in an election, in a town election, we might have 50 absentee ballots. And in a state election, the most I ever had was like 500 absentee ballots. In vote by mail, as you can see, the numbers that I sent out in the September primary, we mailed out 1,378 for the state primary, 1,415 for the town election, and in the November election, 2,038. So it's the volume.
And I'm looking at those numbers and I was trying to understand, why was the town election so much more expensive than the state primary and November election?
So this here, the number is the numbers that were not returned. That number that I've given you, the costs, those are the ballots that weren't returned that we mailed out.
For those, okay.
So in my thing is I feel like we wasted a lot of time and money mailing out ballots that were never returned to us, and that's what the cost. And so I go, because people want us to cut, and be frugal, and I don't find this to be frugal.
And from your experience, you're saying the 884 people that voted or that returned a ballot, they would normally have come in and voted anyway, if they didn't have it?
That's what my when I look at the voter history and the number of people that voted, many of them would have voted in elections. They might not have voted in a town election, but they would have voted in a state primary or in a November election. So
Cause also based on these numbers, it looks like it works for state primary and November election, it's a town election that really has the major failure.
Well, yeah, I find that, still, there were 337 ballots that were not returned for a state primary, and there was 264 that were not returned for November. The return rate is better in a state election, cause it's more popular and, people wanna vote. I mean, you get a higher turnout, you get 86% turnout. In a primary, we got what, 26% turnout. And in town elections, yes, we get 10, 20, some elections we get 30% turnout. Just depends on what the questions were and what the contested races.
Okay.
Did you check at all of the not returned mail-in, how many people actually still showed up and voted in person that day?
Yes, 3.
Oh, so that's the,
Voted
voted
in
in person, so 3 people still then came in and vote, so
That's what I had.
528 people got a ballot and just chose not to vote at all.
Yeah, and we're,
I have a question. Your hours that you're proposing, 9 to 3, 9 to 7, and 9 to 3, are somewhat restrictive for people who work and try to commute. Is there any way some of those, and I know it's person hours and people and, it's not magic, but I guess I would just suggest that there are working, we do want to encourage people to vote. And the vote by mail, I totally sympathetic to the numbers and the work you've done for this, so it sounds well thought out. I'm just thinking that there are people commuting from Stow can be arduous, and they may not be able to get here by 7 on one day. Although they could come on a Saturday, but then if there's family things, right?
But if they're not able to come on Saturday, they could have requested the absentee ballot if they know that they're not gonna be there. So what we figure is also too is the amount of time so our office hours are 8:30 to 4. I cut off a half an hour on each, on one end, on the beginning, and on the other end, because it either means Debbie or I have to stay. I don't get, if I accumulate overtime, I try to take the comp time. It's been I can do that. In these small amount of hours, we could extend it to be longer. What would you suggest?
That's always the way to deflect a good question. It's like,
No, I'm serious.
I do that all the time. Well, what do you think?
Do you want, right, I could go back into the Friday before, but I find that, people wouldn't come late on a Friday.
No.
You could go back to the Thursday before, you could certainly do that, and
No,
we
I
could
was
do
just
until
thinking
7.
If there was one day, it could be till 8, because usually people get home by 7:30.
So you wanna make Tuesday 8:00?
I don't want to.
No.
Yes, if there was one night that was just a little later than 7, and I know I'm asking you personally this, and this is me. So I think that absentee ballot is, and this is local elections we're talking about, absentee ballots are a very good option, and so maybe the alternative is to just make sure there's adequate public information that absentee ballots are an option.
If they're not, right, and you have to have a reason, vote by mail, you don't have a reason. Ingeborg, I could stay open till 8 on Tuesday.
Let's see what Denise
Well,
says.
would you, on Wednesday, or Tuesday, could you do 12 to 8? I don't know that you need to be, if you
Sure.
have the 9 and 9 on Monday and Wednesday, you could do like a 12 to 8
Sure.
on the Wednesday, so it's not all day long.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of, trying to be consistent with the start times, cause somebody will inevitably show up at 9, cause they saw it at 9. I think I would rather stay with consistency, and then we'll just shift our hours around a little bit. But, yeah, 8:00. You wanna come hang out with us?
Courtney?
Well,
This
usually on
is select board.
Tuesdays, I have meetings.
There you go. So you're
Every Tuesday,
And
I
we
have
probably will on the
meetings.
16th.
yeah, well then we'll be around anyway. You can come in that day and vote.
I'll come in and help you.
That's
There you
right.
go.
So
Oh,
the
no, we
select
won't.
board cannot help at
That is off.
elections.
That
It's
is an
under
off
mass
We're not
law.
allowed to.
You're not allowed, select board members are not allowed to help at elections on election day.
Oh,
Early voting,
okay.
anybody can help.
Oh, is that right?
Interesting.
Yes.
Maybe I'll opt out of one of my board meetings and come to
Well, we don't have,
So
we don't
we
have-
do not have a
we
meeting
do
that
not have a- Courtney had a question.
I
Yes.
just wanted to clarify, I know you said this, and I've clarified it with you before, but so people that might work on a Saturday, 10 to 4, can still get an absentee ballot, like that's a valid reason, working
Working,
is a
right,
valid reason.
if
that
you're
you
not in
wanna vote.
town during our polling hours, that's what the law says, if you're not in town during the polling hours, then you can get an absentee ballot.
Thank you.
So if working, or if it's Saturdays could be the religious holiday.
Yep.
And so they can get an absentee ballot.
We do have someone online, Catherine, I believe, can you just identify yourself and your address, please?
Yep. Hi, Catherine West, 8 High Street.
Yeah.
Hi, Lynn. So full disclosure, I am an election volunteer. I've been volunteering for many years and definitely know how much work goes into both mail-in voting and early voting and day of voting and collecting all the other things. So, you know, no disrespect to anybody's yeoman's effort that goes into this, but in a nation where we kind of have a problem with voter disenfranchisement, and in a nation that's still undergoing a global health pandemic, I would really like to see the option for mail-in voting continue. I think in every year since 2020, I, as a volunteer, have personally helped someone to vote who is COVID positive. And I want them to vote. It's their right. If they show up at the polling place, we are absolutely gonna find a way for them to vote. But we have a slightly elderly population, let's just say. We have people who are immunocompromised. I think the more that we can give people more options, and again, I know it's a ton of work, it's not my call, I know how much Deb and Linda put into this, but the more that we can do to give people healthy, safe, and frequent options to vote, I think the more we do to engage our community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, good point, but
Well said.
would that, a person immunocompromised, any kind of COVID issues, would they be considered, that'd be eligible for
So-
absentee?
COVID was a valid excuse in 2020, it went away in 2022. So if Kate is correct, and we've had several people who tested positive with COVID, they hadn't requested a vote by mail, they come to the polls, and we have set up a ballot box outside so that they could vote. It would not be an excuse to get an absentee currently, unless the legislature changes anything between, and I don't think they
If
have.
someone's considered immunocompromised, that's not considered a
Well,
disability?
it could, so we don't ask
Right.
what your reason is.
Right.
You have to say, do I qualify, do I have a disability? And maybe being immunocompromised may be sufficient enough, I don't know that answer. I don't go check out if someone says we're not here. If we're not here,
You're not
going to be
here,
here.
you're not coming by our
You're not
houses to
knocking
see
on
if we're.
doors.
No, I'd rather be hanging out at the polls.
Right, okay,
But it's signed in the pains and penalty of perjury.
Yeah.
And so we are being respectful. Stow has generally a very good turnout. I mean, yes, local elections are not as highly, people don't participate as much. Typically, many years, we don't have contested races. We don't have ballot questions. When we have contested races and we have ballot questions, the numbers will go up. And the most I think I've seen in a town election, I wanna say about a 36% turnout for any high volume election, town election. And so in the state elections in all the previous times, 2020 and 2022, the state sent out the postcards to everybody and people had to return them. And the towns do not have to mail out the applications to, include them. People will have to print them off, send them in to us, get them in. The volume might be small anyway, but, you know, it's not gonna be an automatic thing. And right now, we have the annual election and we expect to have a special in the fall.
Yes, Hector.
So I just wanted to clarify from what Kate suggested, our choice here tonight, in essence, is either the early voting or vote by mail.
Yeah,
So
if
if we
you-
vote by mail, we're not getting early voting.
That would be my recommendation because I really don't wanna do both.
In terms of the amount of
Okay.
time.
I don't wanna do both. And I don't think it's necessary to do both, but I actually think that in-person early voting is an option that still avails itself to many people and we get reasonably good turnouts with those.
Well, and
as
I
well.
also agree that I like the idea of having the vote by mail, cause it gives more options, but if I had to choose between one or the other, I'd rather pick the early voting than vote by mail.
Okay.
So Linda, I have a question. I'm on the Secretary of State's website looking at the most recent absentee ballot application. You actually, according to this, you don't have to select a reason. It just says voter information, what you're requesting your ballots for, only if you're selecting a special circumstance, but it says it's not required, and then you sign.
No, right. You don't have to identify what option you're using, that you are just stating that you are qualified to get that ballot. There's no little checkbox saying I'm disabled or any of that. But under the, if you look at some of the reasons of why you can get an absentee ballot, then that's where it is.
Yes, it says absence from the city or town during polling hours, disability, or religious beliefs.
Correct.
But you don't actually, you're just filling out an application.
You're filling
saying
out an
you're looking-
application, and yeah, cause we don't ask, like I said, we don't ask. But if someone challenged it, you know, the Secretary of State's office probably be the one that would, I don't know, I've never had that situation.
How would someone challenge it?
I know, right?
If you
Don't
had
ask
an
me.
excessive number perhaps, and there was a question of whether votes were valid.
I don't think anybody's ever challenged them, but I don't.
Well, and as I said, I think Stow has a pretty good track record of the efficiency and attention to detail for our election process, so. I mean, we're not a town that I think is suspect and,
Right,
I mean, you never know, I can't.
right.
So-
I'm not gonna go around
Yeah.
checking.
Right.
And for people that are immunocompromised, there's not gonna be a big crowd at early voting. I mean,
Right, it's
could
better
be
early voting.
fairly alone or could certainly be
And
distanced from.
during COVID, there were some people that didn't wanna come into the building, so we had a booth outside. So they could vote right outside the door.
So if you got a request from an individual or some individuals that they would like to vote in person early and they had special circumstances, would you be able to meet them most likely?
We do have some voters that are, but they are on our permanently disabled list and they have received a note from their doctor saying that they're not able to get to elections, and so we send, you know, I think we have 10 right now that have notes from the doctor saying that they are unable to get to the polls on election day, and so we initiate the absentee ballot application process, send them an application, they send it back, some don't. But we do have some of that, so there are, you know, it's something between them and their doctor of what would be considered a disability.
Do we have any other questions from people online? I don't see any hands. Any final questions in here, Hector?
What's the last day for absentee ballot requests?
Noon, I think it's noon before, if to vote in person for an absentee ballot, noon before the day of the election, so I think it's Friday.
So if somebody tests positive that week, they could still get an absentee ballot?
It wouldn't be able to be mailed to them because it was noon, that you'd have to, I believe that's it.
Just need to invest in a 10-foot
Yeah, the
pole.
dates have all changed under this new law, the Votes Act that was passed in July, and
I just wanna make
and I
sure,
was just thinking of based on a Tuesday election, I know noon on Monday, people could come in and have to have the application and then they could vote. So,
I just wanna make sure if people test positive, they have some way to get an absentee ballot.
yeah, if you're admitted to a hospital or a facility or within 7 days of the election, they can request that a ballot be delivered to them at the facility, but it's, hospitalized within the prior 7 days to the election. So there are things, and we've had people where a family member can deliver a ballot to them, or be a member of the Board of Registrars, or an election worker. Only twice maybe in 20 plus years has that happened.
Okay,
So the absentee votes have the same deadline as vote by mail
For doing an
to return it,
returning it,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, by the end of the polling day, right?
everything has to be back to us.
And
That was
you-
another thing about vote by mail. I mean, people are dropping them off on election day. And, if you're dropping them off in my mailbox here on election day, you just passed the polls.
And you do advertise in the paper all these
All
deadlines so
these
that people
On the
have
website,
chances, they will hear about it.
newspaper,
So-
online.
So if there's no more questions, I think we're ready to we're gonna do two motions and we need to just change it, Hector, so it says for the spring 23 elections, not all elections.
And you're gonna change it
And then
until
you'll
8
include the
o'clock on
dates,
Tuesday?
yes.
What was the hours for Tuesday?
Tuesday, 9 to 8.
9 to 8, okay.
And I would
We're
s-
also changing the language, it's gonna be opt-in and
Well, it's two different
opt-out.
votes.
I know, but these
I know,
motions
I
are
know,
two.
but we're gonna do the first one first, and
It
that's the one that's got
So
more
we're
changes
opting
to
out
it.
of vote by mail?
Right now, we're gonna, the first motion is around early voting.
Okay,
But it says approve the option, so I think
That's
we
what
need
we're
to-
doing.
Are we, respectfully, I think it needs to be that we need to move to opt-in, isn't that the language?
Opt in to early voting.
To approve the option of in-person early voting?
No, I think I move to opt-in,
Yeah,
is that the right language?
I think that's more
Opt-in
clear.
to in-person early voting.
Yep.
For the spring 2023 elections.
And if I would say the annual town election, not
Yeah,
spring. I
annual.
would say for the 2023 annual town election.
Annual town election, okay.
so it would be I move to opt in to in-person early voting? Is that what okay. We'll try it once. And I need to specify the hours, right?
Yes.
So I move to opt in to in-person early voting in Stow for the annual town election of 2023 with the hours of Monday, May 15th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Tuesday, May 16th, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Wednesday, May 17th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Second,
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you.
Yes.
Recused. Okay, so then the second one is to
Opt out.
opt out,
So
and for the same language, the annual.
I move to opt out of vote by mail in Stow for the annual town election of 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I'd just like to say,
Nope.
with all due respect to Kate's pertinent and well-spoken comments, and thank you for coming and speaking up.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay.
Can I ask
Yes.
before you go, do you wanna talk about nomination papers?
Oh, sure.
Or anything else about the office next week,
Oh.
perhaps?
Yes, yes. Sorry to take up all your time.
Coming back to sit down. Yes.
Okay.
Come on back.
I'll keep talking. So nomination papers, will be ready starting tomorrow. And we'll be here, let's see, tomorrow's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And next week is school vacation, and both Debbie and I will be off during school vacation. I have grandchildren, so I'm going to enjoy their time. And Debbie, has, some high school kids and family time that she needs. And so, we will put all this information on our website, on the phone, everywhere. But then we'll be back in session on Monday the following, and we'll we recommend that anybody who wants nomination papers to let us know in advance, give us a call, send us an email. Then we'll have everything prepared because it's a multi-step thing. We want to explain, you only need 39 signatures this year instead of 40. And it's based on the number of ballots cast in the governor's race,
Wow.
Wow.
1%. So
Jeez.
yeah.
And how many voted in our town for the
for
government?
our town in that, so it was either they voted for a candidate
Yeah.
or did a write-in, the blanks don't count.
Oh my goodness.
I know, it's complicated. And so I have a whole list of dates to remember, we'll put those on the website and we'll have that all set to go. And I thank you very much. Is there any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sturgis.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it.
Heck, you got the hard part.
And I did it right.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Thank
Very
you.
nice.
All right, so I had asked Denise to put this next agenda item on for ARPA funding, and it just says reallocate funding. And I wanna just be clear that I had this put on because of the discussion we were having about the $100,000 for the kind of community grants. And so I wanted to make sure that we were that we, as a board, were able to talk about if we wanna leave that money, if we could find something else to be able to use it. I wanted to allow all board members to speak first about what their ideas were. I know Ellen, you had mentioned the library. Did anybody else have any other things they wanted?
Can I just make a comment in advance of your discussion? So I would just add that I would support only looking at the 100,000 at this point and still leaving the 294,000 that's unallocated. As we've talked about, and as you saw when I gave you the report last meeting, everything we're purchasing, every project we're doing is coming in over what we've allocated. So I think it's necessary to keep this funding here to allow us to close out all these projects. I don't wanna get into a situation that we go to buy the building department truck and we've only allocated 40 and it's 50,000 and now we need to come up with that money. Because we still have all of this year and all of next year to allocate it, we have plenty of time once these projects are closed out. I talked to the department heads this morning that I'm gonna send out a list of all the projects for their respective department to get a status update on timing. Some of it is, just, the vehicles, we just can't find vehicles to purchase. A lot of the projects, its parts are still on back order, we're waiting on companies to come in, and then some of the projects were more spring related than fall and winter. So I would respectfully ask at this point, we leave the main 294 still to be allocated so we can close those out. And if you'd like to reallocate the 100,000, I fully support that and however you decide.
Great.
So thank you.
All right, with that, Ms. Sturgis, do you wanna start?
So my general feeling is that I was sort of skeptical we'd have requests initially, but it was like worth a try. But I know, we have huge costs coming down the road and this has been a lovely option to be able, I think last year when we could take a bunch of things off of town meeting because we had the ARPA money and I know, capital planning has it in their mind because of the request that they're getting in case, this, with the same issues actually of things not being able to get delivered, but, so I just think I'd rather roll it into the 294, that I don't have a
I see.
particularly, I don't wanna say I think we should use it for the library necessarily, but I just think we should add it to the list and just say, let's release the 100 and say it's, it's good, cause it does seem like an awful lot of things are coming in over budget. Talking to the fire chief this week about, from capital planning about the costs, or it's sort of scary how much things are going up, so.
Okay. Yep. Anybody else? No?
I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah. How do you feel?
I like the library idea.
I know, I was like, it would be great if we could get furniture for the library, like, that was my thinking, is like, we take the 100,000 and like, put it towards a very specific thing for the library, not just like overhead costs or whatever, like, we buy books, we buy, but I do agree, I think if this board is to be the fiscally responsible board, then it probably does make the most sense to roll it back in.
And if we have the money left over when it comes time.
Right, it'll go back into the library, right,
Right.
or whatever, but I think that does make sense, so.
Well, and if, I mean, I don't know if it's quite the same, but when we had the school project, when you're doing a major construction project, you can actually get financing for things like all
Got it.
that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, does that work the same with the library? I'm not sure if it's
Yes,
quite-
I mean, there are still grants, so we are still looking at grant opportunities. The town accountant just reached out to me that we have another old capital item. It's $58,000, but it has to be reallocated at town meeting to another borrowing, so we're
Okay.
looking for other small things that we can put towards this.
Yep.
Because we know the cost is gonna come in
Yep.
over what we've appropriated. So, I mean, I think that's fine. I'm hopeful that we won't need the 294, let alone the extra 100,000 to close out these projects, cause then it's really out of control.
Right.
So yes, if there's an opportunity to, as we go down the line, or quite frankly, as if we have an opportunity to pick off some of the capital items, because there are a lot this year, and apply some of those toward with this money, that would help as well, so that we're not funding them through the budget. But I think that's a great approach, and then that gives us some flexibility to either close out projects, pay some capital, or allocate it to a future larger use.
Okay. All right,
So do we need to?
I think that'll be the motion, do you? So, yeah,
No, cause we didn't know what, so I would just, Hector, for a motion, roll the 100,000 in just to the lost revenue category of ARPA funding to be used for future purposes.
great,
Cause then I'll just close that out and put it back in the main category.
Roll the 100,000 to what?
Revenue loss is what ARPA calls it.
Okay. Am I ready?
yep, I will take a motion.
Okay, I move to roll the 100,000 to revenue loss category of ARPA funds for the projects and purposes described at this meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye, and that is unanimous. All right, next, I would like to just go over the select board draft, 2022 annual report. I will say that Phoebe did an amazing job writing this.
I really liked it.
I just, it's phenomenal. I'd love to applaud her for this. I went through the draft and was like, I literally have no changes. Like, this is, this is her gift for sure.
It
Yeah,
was familiar. And
it was.
It was nice.
And it also, I mean, every year I read this since I've been on the board, I'm like, we did a lot of work. Like, there is, so I am, anyway, so that's all I have to say. Did anybody have any changes, any comments, anything that they wanted to go in? Yep.
Like you all said, I think this is fantastic, and I didn't realize the board does this much. The only thing I did not see mentioned here was what the Hometown Heroes project of the Girl Scouts, which I know has run into a bit of a problem, but I think it should also be acknowledged that they did come before us to ask for approval for that project.
Sure. I think then I would say, the paragraph that starts recognitions feature
Right.
prominently, I think that, we can put, in the second sentence, I think we could put something about hometown heroes for the Girl Scouts, and then the second sentence, as it currently stands, actually encompasses all of it, so, thank you, that's a great point. So yeah, I think that's the only one. All right. Well, with that, I'll take a motion to approve, as with the amended.
So
Yes.
do you want to approve it, or do you want me to have Phoebe add that and you can look at it at your next meeting?
I think I trust that Phoebe's gonna do a
did that
great
good
job,
job.
she did it.
I move to approve the Select Board 22 annual report as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's unanimous. And we have a policy in front of us, the buy recycled policy, and Denise.
Yes, as I mentioned in my memo, we are looking to qualify for the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program through DEP. One of their action items is to adopt a buy recycled policy. The one that's included here actually came from the town of Dennis. This is what they've adopted, and it meets the criteria through the state. If we implement this tonight, and I send it out to departments tomorrow, we would then qualify for the full recycled dividend program, which is also prorated because we are a non-recycling, we don't pick up trash and recycling townwide, so we get a prorated amount anyways. But if we meet the February 15th deadline, we qualify for the full allotment that we are eligible for. And then those points, they give us points, and then we can turn those points into programs like composting bins, and other type of recycling programs, mainly that Sustainable Stow would spearhead, but also through our Green Advisory Committee. So,
Fantastic.
as the policy articulates, this doesn't say we will. It just says we will make a good faith effort, provided that the quality and price are comparable to what we're looking for. So if you have any questions, otherwise I hope we would push this through this evening.
So is there a catalog now of what is to buy recycled materials for?
Not really catalogs, but like we could go on WB Mason and we could click off the box for recycled products and it will give you the list of what they sell that's recycled. And most of our office supply companies have that.
Great.
That's great.
Any other questions? All right, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the buy recycled policy as presented at this meeting.
Second?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's turn it over to meeting minutes. Any questions? Any
Good.
comments?
Go Joyce.
I know, again, it's like,
We're blessed
We're
with
spoiled.
seriously.
strong staff.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
many areas, just all over the building.
Especially after the Lake Boone Dam meeting, I was like, here you go.
Best
Yeah,
of
this
luck
is
to you.
incredible.
Yeah.
Just-
It's just, she does a great job, there's a lot of information and it's just very concise and
Summarizing without.
summarizing
yeah.
without, so, okay. All right, I will take motions on,
Two separate ones, right?
Yep.
Okay, I move to accept the meeting minutes of the January 24th, 2023 meeting as drafted.
Second?
any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
I move to accept the meeting minutes of the January 31st, 2023 meeting as drafted.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, correspondence. Any questions? Anything? Correspondence?
The two extensive ones, it really is planning board stuff, right? I mean, we're getting CC'd on them, but, because I can't say that I understand all of the ups and downs and ins and outs of, but they both really are standing in front of planning board, right?
ZB.
I guess it's sort of a question, sort of just confirmation.
Which two are you, because
Well,
there were
We're talking
several
about
that
the
were
zoning,
longer
The
the
one from Ms. Fisher and the one from,
Lee Hildebrandt.
Yeah, so I think the, Ms. Fisher is ZBA, Ms. Hildebrand is planning board.
right.
Is what I would say. But yes, the board is CC'd on those, they were mainly addressed to the respective boards.
Right, there's no action items.
Can I just ask if you feel as though those items being taken under consideration and there is going to be movement in whatever ways are possible on our town side of things?
So it's a little difficult because Ms. Fisher's matter is currently at the courts. We are still going through that, so there's not much that the ZBA could do at this point. I think we're sort of, I did send that to town council. If you'll recall, we are taking a passive approach in that matter, just sort of following along. So they have received it. they recommended there's nothing at this point we need to do for that. I don't know, I know obviously, the planning board is actively talking about lower village and lower village zoning, so I can follow up with Valerie to see what action, if any, they're planning to take on that, but I have not at this point.
Cool, thank you.
So, did I understand her letter? I thought she said that the court had resolved an issue.
An older issue,
Okay,
but it wasn't enforced. So there's a lot of
Oh, she made it sound
confusion.
like it was.
She
Yeah.
put together a lot of information.
okay,
And it's definitely convoluted. It's not convoluted in a negative way, I don't mean that. I just mean that it's,
very complicated.
It's over a lot of
Yes.
years.
thank you, complicated is the right word. And
Okay.
it is over years. And I personally, I think someone who put that much work into it, I hope that there is some response. So I appreciate you asking about that. I'm not at all familiar with it, except what I read. But it sounds like if there was a previous older court action defining where the line of zoning is, and I'm not a zoning expert, but I think it's worth us at least having the planning board look into it.
Yeah, or the CBA, I guess, in this case.
No, this one's.
This one's
No, it's
planning
planning
board?
board.
Hildebrandt is planning board,
Fisher,
Fisher is zoning.
it's on, okay,
But council has looked into that and said at this point, there's nothing we should do on that matter, because it's in the courts. Because whatever is decided, because the 2017 case that she's referring to has rolled forward into the current case and some of the
Okay.
current matters.
I guess my question also is, do we feel, for instance, that Ms. Hildebrandt has a clear answer, has an understanding from this chain of emails as to, I mean, do we feel as, I guess we wouldn't have this in our packet if we would be copied if there was not still a question. So is there anything that we can do further to be sure that you know, I guess the planning board is looking into it.
Right, so I can follow up with Valerie to see if the planning board, so this was, there perhaps were more before that, but this email was sent to the planning board, CC'd the select board.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they've taken action on it. We were not copied on any action or any response from the planning board, but I can ask what they plan to do with that and report back.
I had a question on correspondence, and it was the Mass DOT letter.
Yes.
Great. Do I need to sign something and return something? Like, what is the end of this?
No, that was just confirming that, so we have been going back and forth with Mass DOT regarding Track Road and releasing the funding. So the funding that we got from Representative Trahan's office, the $750,000, went to DOT, and they've sort of been holding it hostage. And we've been actively meeting with them because they didn't like the design of Track Road. They didn't like what we were planning.
Right.
It didn't meet their specifications. So we've been actively meeting, and in one of our last meetings, I had Laurie Trahan's staff in the meeting with us on the Zoom to express how important this was to the representative.
Right.
And so we've been sort of going back and forth, and then we finally got word that they have agreed, provided we do 2 more drawings to see if there's another plan they like, but they have agreed to release the funding. And then this letter, in one of our meetings, they said, well, because it came through DOT, you have to put up a match. I'm like, we're not and Laurie Trahan's office was like, they're not putting up a match, that's not what this was for. So the state is actually giving us the match that we're supposed to put up because this is their requirement, it's not the federal government's requirement. So this letter is just solidifying that they will be releasing our money and they will be providing the match that
I'm
we
just
don't.
wondering if attachment A,
Cool.
who needs to sign that?
Yeah, I'll double check.
Okay.
But yes, so we are finally,
I know, I was like, my name's all over this, Steve.
yeah, it starts off with your name.
Alright, well, just let me know if you need a signature.
And then on the Gleasondale project, I assume that it, once the CPC is voted on stuff, we'll be hearing from all the proposals. I mean, we often vote to
Yeah,
support,
that
right?
would be
And
my
that
guess.
was what she was asking, was if they wanted to make a presentation, but it seems like we don't influence the CPC, so it would be, once the CPC has agreed to fund it, then we could vote to support it, or hear it and vote to support it.
Yes, I think that they're asking you to take a position on the warrant article if it goes
Yeah.
forward.
Right, so.
And to my understanding, and you may be able to speak better, I think Ingeborg, you're currently on CPC, but I think there's only 2 proposals before them this year.
Okay.
I also wanted to acknowledge Naz's stand against anti-Asian American racism and the statement that was made as a result of the hate crime that happened earlier this month.
I can keep track.
I know, it is.
Yeah.
It is. All right. With that, our next item is executive session, so I would ask Hector to make a motion,
I'll shut it because I'm gonna grab the.
which is
print
going
off the policy.
to convene us into executive session. We will be adjourning afterwards and not returning to the select board meeting. With that,
Open session.
I move to convene an executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to litigation if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and Section 21A7 to review executive session minutes per MGL Chapter 30A, Sections 22F, G, for the meeting on October 12, 2022, and to adjourn thereafter.
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor? We have to do a roll call. Ms. Hageman?
Aye.
Ms. Fresha?
Aye.
Mr. Costanzas?
Aye.
Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We are going into executive session. Thank you all.